Hello and welcome to SHRM Session 3, Part 1. In this session, we will talk about how internal and external factors impact SHRM, and we'll also cover trends that add to the dynamism of the business world. Your learning outcome for this lesson revolves around getting to know the internal environmental factors that have an impact on SHRM. By the end of this session, you will be able to gain a perspective on internal organizational factors impacting SHRM. SHRM involves the consideration of internal and external factors and their influence on an organization's HR strategy in order to achieve organizational objectives. Now, as we have discussed before, SHRM consists of two major aspects. First is the integration of human resource management into the business strategy, and second, the involvement of human resource practice to meet environmental challenges. In this lesson, we are looking at internal elements. These are the forces internal to an organization. Internal forces, of course, have very profound influence on HR factors. The internal environment of HRM consists of unions, organizational culture and conflict, professional bodies, organizational objectives, policies, and things like that. Let's look at these factors in detail. All organizations should behave through their mission statements. Mission statements demonstrate the framework that firms should operate in. Therefore, mission statements also determine the human resource policies indirectly. As a mission statement shows the basic reason behind the foundation of an organization, it also gives a base or a foundation in terms of orientation to all functions of that organization. Now, accordingly, human resource policies and practices should be consistent with this statement. On the other hand, these type of statements integrate functions through purposes. So the first internal factor that SHRM should take concern of is the organizational mission or its purpose. Organizational strategy or the objectives is another internal environmental factor. Organizational strategy reflects the set of methods to achieve purposes and requires the restructure of principles, rules, departments, and it simply means what is the mindset of a given organization. The human resource policies of a firm should support activities to implement organizational strategies. Therefore, the selection, education, development, performance appraisal, and reward sub-functions of HRM should be appropriate to the general strategy of establishment. The successful practices of human resource management sub-functions should facilitate the achievement of organizational goals. In other words, organizational outcomes can be gained easily through the adaptation of human resource policies to the business strategy. According to several authors, every unit or function of an organization should adapt its strategy to organizational strategy. This is the necessity of strategy implementation for achieving goals. Therefore, we can say that human resource strategies or implementation should always fit the organizational strategy. Another key internal environmental factor is the actions of corporate headquarters. If the firm is a multinational, or if it has a parent company, or if the headquarter is in some other place than the organization. Corporate headquarters determine the purpose and the organizational strategy. Their philosophy and their vision structure is the framework for the policies of human resource management. Equally, corporate headquarters are also responsible to form unified strategies across the branches that it has. Therefore, human resource policies should always be a part of the common strategies that are put by the corporate headquarters. Corporate headquarters could also have priorities in terms of the policy of selection, recruitment, learning and development, retaining employees, wages and salaries, performance appraisal, and even social support. Accordingly, skills and abilities, education, experience, loyalty, political view, gender, ethnicity, or anti discrimination can also be criteria or the source of HRM practices, all dependent on the corporate headquarters' actions. Another internal factor that SHRM must take into account is the size of the organization, which is very important for the extent of human resource activities. It can be measured through maybe the number of employees, the income for a year, or even the sum of the production, the volume. Accordingly, HR practices in terms of number of functions will be higher in a larger firm than in a small and medium enterprise. Large firms, such as international or multinational firms, should add many new dimensions to their HRM implementations. Also, new developments or innovations in practices generally and continuously occur in more larger organizations. Why? Because they have more qualified, knowledgeable people, and there is a wider business horizon and more sophisticated cultures. The size of the organization is also significant for managerial style, whether you have autocratic management or participative management. Now, large organizations can afford to be more democratic, so their departments or branches might be a little bit more autonomous. In these type of establishments, decentralized management is a necessity in order to be effective. So, in large organizations, we see that there is less control and more confidence. Whereas in a small organization, there will necessarily be a little bit more control, and more or less the management will have the reins when it comes to coordination. The structure of an organization is yet another important internal environmental factor. The structure can be vertical or horizontal. For instance, vertically structured organizations have very hard hierarchies. This reflects a lot of centralization. In this type of organization, human resources is under tight control of the upper hierarchical levels. On the other hand, for an organization with a more horizontal structure, systems provide more flexibility to employees. Of course, there are some studies which show the link between organizational structure and the type of behaviors in an organization. The scope of HRM will depend on the type of structure that a firm adopts. We will discuss this more in future sessions. Another important internal factor is the history, the traditions, or the past practices of an organization. The history of an organization reveals what is good and what is bad for it. It demonstrates the characteristics of its best employees. Accordingly, traditions of an organization show the efficient methods for HRM functions, and this is the base for related strategy and policies as well. In other words, many times past practices construct current activities and also influence future activities. So, the evaluations of HRM experiences will facilitate productive implementations in the future. The priorities of top management can be another source for HRM practices. Some priorities of top management can be political or professional in behavior. Also, top management might pay attention to internal harmony, which leads to efficiency or profitability. Authors Maybe and Salomon point out that the importance of shareholder priorities and management agendas on activities such as training and development is always apparent in an organization. Another author, Buller, found that the skills and values of top management about HRM might be as one of the main factors affecting related strategies and procedures. So it is very vital for HRM to always know what the priorities of the top management are and align their functions to it. A novel aspect, but an important one. Occupational stress is also becoming a very key internal environmental factor in the practice of SHRM. According to the World Health Organization, stress is considered to be one of the biggest health threats of the 21st century. Occupational stress is the result of non compatibility of work requirements and an employee's capabilities. Stress happens when the requirements of a job exceed the adaptation capacity of an employee, either because the situation is potentially threatening or because it exceeds coping abilities. Stress causes a measurable economic cost to the company because it includes things like increased absenteeism, lower productivity, more accidents at the workplace, higher staff turnover, and increased costs associated with employee sick leaves. This is something for HR managers to keep track of.